Winning Blueprint presents
In the Lab Room.
Exclusive.
With limited interruptions, In the Lab Room presents the 5-part series, The League. Part 5, Gay in the NFL. Welcome. You are in the Lab Room. I'm your host, Luke. Thank you for joining me. This is The League. This is the series finale, Gay in the NFL. And it's a touchy subject. A lot of people really don't want to go near this, but get off me. I'm not afraid or bashful to touch on this subject at all. And so today we're going to talk about the NFL and are they ready for a gay player to come out while active, and how this culture is not geared towards having gay players in the locker rooms in the National Football League. It's been a topic that has been widely discussed in this offseason. It started with Jason Collins, an NBA player who is active, but he's not on an NBA roster. He's not probably going to be signed onto an NBA roster. And so while I thought that was a very huge step in the right direction, I thought it was still on a very small scale. It takes guys with guts to do that, even though I don't think it's going to have the impact that many people around sports think that it's going to have. I don't think it's going to have that big of an impact, especially in the National Football League, because I just don't think the National Football League is ready for an active gay player. Here's why. Now, we've heard Roger Goodell come out and say, hey, the NFL is ready and we would be willing to embrace a gay player and yada, yada, yada. And while I truly do believe Roger Goodell, sincerely, and in his mind, he thinks that, hey, we're ready and we're willing and able to deal with any type of player that were to come out and say that he was gay, and there would be no backlash. And in my mind, and I'm very naive, and this is a very naive statement, this is how I feel on the subject. If you're gay, say you're gay, we're going to treat you the same anyway. Now, that's as naive as it gets, because that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, my whole stance on it is, hey, if you're gay, say you're gay. No need to live in the shadows. No need to feel like you need to live a lie. No need to put on a facade for everyone. If you're gay, say you're gay. It's okay. But that's not the way that it's going to be received around the National Football League in all the circles. General manager, players in that locker room. And look, we have a lot of players who say, yeah, I'm supportive and I wouldn't mind if a player came out if he was gay. Hey, that's what you're supposed to say. And some of those guys genuinely mean that. But I tell you what, around the National Football League, for every player that is okay, that has absolutely no problem, they have a gay cousin, they're absolutely fine being a teammate with a gay player. For every teammate like that, there's another one like Chris Culliver waiting in the shadows who, look, they may not say it because it does nothing for you. There is no good that can come of a player coming out and saying, hey, I don't want a gay teammate. Nothing good can come of it. As we found out with the Chris Culliver situation right before the Super Bowl. There's nothing good that can come of you saying how you might really feel. If you feel that way, keep it to yourself. Because the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to be crucified in the media, and you might have to have some kind of sanction against you, because in this day and age, that's blasphemy to come out and say that out of your mouth. Even though you may be thinking it, you can't say it. And so you're going to have guys who haven't said anything, won't speak up, but in their mind, they have nothing but the utmost disrespect for that guy because they know that he's a homosexual. And so I tell you what, I want to delve into this topic because this is something that has fascinated me. I wrote a thesis on this when I was in college, and it went over very well. I did a presentation, and that was probably the best paper I've ever written. That was the most fun I've ever had writing a paper. And so I've really thought about this topic for quite a long time. And so I want to dive into this and get into this topic in depth and really comb over this situation because I think it's one that isn't going to go away, but I don't think the NFL is ready anytime soon for an openly gay player. So I looked at some of the happenings in the offseason, and this told the story for me as far as where the NFL is in terms of having a openly gay player in the National Football League. I think that all of the different transactions and things that happened over or transactions that didn't happen, and all of the things that I've heard that have happened over the offseason in a series of months or so have really led me to believe that I don't think the NFL is quite ready for an openly gay player. So I start with the NFL Combine. And I heard a story about several GMs and several teams asking players, do you like women? And what kind of a question is that? What does that have to do with playing football on the field? Absolutely nothing. Zero. Nothing. Has nothing to do with playing football and being a productive member of a football team. Absolutely nothing. But what that GM is basically getting at is, hey, are you gay? Because I don't think GMs are homophobic. And I had a discussion with a good buddy of mine, and we went back and forth on this, and I think he really hit it on the head. GMs aren't homophobic. They just don't want the backlash. They don't want all of the hype, all of the attention, because as we all know, if an openly gay player comes out while still playing, if he's active on an NFL roster, you can't cut him, because if you cut him, it looks like you cut him because he's gay, and if you do that, oh, you're going to have some bigger problems on your hands. Trust me on that one. So he's not going anywhere if he comes out and says he's openly gay. But what it's going to do is create a firestorm, one that no GM in the National Football League wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. We've seen how Tim Tebow essentially scared off 32 teams, or should I say 31. The Patriots finally came calling, and I think they were the only team that could handle the spectacle that is Tim Tebow. GMs don't want any part of a player or a situation that's going to take away from their football team, that's going to take away from the overall message and the overall feeling that, hey, all we want to do is win. The overriding theme of every team in the league is, hey, we just want to win. We want to go about our business as every team in the league. We want to just focus in on football. We don't want any distractions. We just want to play football and win. And if a guy comes out and says he's gay, that's the direct opposite. It's counterproductive, because if a guy comes out and says he's gay, guess what? It's not a football story. It's not a sports story. This is a national headline. This is on CNN. This is on Good Morning America. This is on every news media outlet across the country. And so you're going to have every different kind of question you can imagine coming at every single player, personnel, staff on your roster for the duration of the season. It's not going away. It's much like Bountygate. Once that were to occur, your season would be over the minute this happens. And so GMs are terrified. They're afraid of that happening. And so to eliminate that, they're asking questions that have absolutely nothing to do with football. Like, hey, do you like women? Which is absolutely asinine to me, but hey, they need to know. They feel like that's a question I got to know. And of course, if you're gay, you're going to say yes. You're not going to say, no, I like men. You'd fail the interview right then and there. So, of course, they're going to say yes anyway. And some of them might be baffled by the question, like, what? Did you just ask me? Of course, you're going to have to answer the question anyway, because they're waiting for an answer. But GMs are scared. So that's number one. GMs are terrified of having a gay player on their football team. That's number one. Number two, the backlash in the locker room. Now look, 60% of the locker room is probably going to be fine with a gay player coming out and saying, hey, I'm homosexual. I think 60% of the locker room will be perfectly fine. They'll treat him just as if he were heterosexual. They'll treat him just as they did before they found out he was gay. It's the other 40% that I'm worried about. Those guys that will have so much animosity built up toward that player. Those guys that, because as we all know, that will change the dynamic in the locker room. If a guy's gay, all of a sudden, that butt slap that you give a guy after they make a heck of a play, that's no longer a regular butt slap. You can't do that anymore. You're not allowed to slap butts anymore if you're gay. It's just that simple. You can't, because now all of a sudden it has a hidden meaning. No one wants to be associated with that. So, okay, so that changes one dynamic in the locker room. Two, guys walk around naked in the locker room all the time. It's what they do. In a locker room, you have the freedom to just let it all hang out, literally. And so guys walk around, no towels, no clothes, nothing, all the time. That would come to an end. It would cease because guys wouldn't be comfortable being naked, full butt-bald naked around a gay guy. Because as we all know, we're all trained to think that, hey, he wants me, which most gay guys don't want any of us. But mentally, you don't think that way. If he's gay, all bets are off. You don't know what this guy's thinking now. So, again, that's another issue you'd have in the locker room. That kind of brotherhood that you share in the locker room, it's going to be a bond that will be severed once a guy comes out and says he's gay. Because if a guy is gay, no longer is it a tight-knit group, a brotherhood. You can joke about stuff. These guys throw out homophobic jokes all the time. If you've ever been in a football locker room, homophobic slurs and jokes are thrown around like guys throw around water bottles at a practice in training camp. It's just how it is. And so if a guy's gay, you can't do that anymore. So a lot of the things that are customs in NFL locker rooms won't happen anymore. And it'll be kind of an uncomfortable feeling in the locker room. Even though you're comfortable with this guy being gay, there are some things that you're not comfortable with, and it would change the whole dynamic of a locker room. So the locker room would be totally different. That's number two. Number three, I don't think the players, the coaches, the organization would be your biggest worry, your biggest enemy if you're a gay player. It's the fans. The fans are the most homophobic people in the world. And it's amazing to see just how homophobic fans are. I went to a Tides game. When I did my thesis, I went to a Norfolk Tides game. I'm from Virginia. We don't have a lot of big sporting events. The closest thing I could get to was a Norfolk Tides game at the time. So I went to a Tides game, and I asked some questions among the patrons at that game. I said, hey, how would you feel if a player came out and was gay in the National Football League? And you wouldn't believe some of the comments I got. I had one guy tell me, I don't want a mother effing faggot on the football field. I had another guy say, hey, I don't want a fairy out there prancing around in front of my kid. And so that was just a snippet of what I got. So can you imagine a gay player going on the road 8 times in the National Football League? The kind of signs, the kind of slurs, the kind of things you would hear and see. I mean, it would be, wow. I mean, it would be a sight for sore eyes. I tell you what, it would be one heck of a journey for that player every week that they're on the road. And forget about the road by itself. What about home games? They wouldn't even be the same. So I tell you what, it would be a totally different dynamic if a guy were to come out in the National Football League and say he were gay. Now, after you get past that, what about opposing players? Okay, we've talked about guys in your locker room. What about opposing players? Okay, again, much like the guys in the locker room, it's going to be split. Maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 60-40, maybe it's 70-30. Either way, it's going to be a divide. There are going to be players that can't stand this guy. There's going to be players that think this guy has contaminated our league. He's done it. Now there's going to be more. And then there's going to be other guys that say, hey, good for you, man. And really appreciate this guy having the guts to stand up and say, hey, I'm gay. And be proud of it. But once you cross those white lines, All of that stuff goes out of the window. Even if you're an advocate of this guy and you feel like he's done a great service to the National Football League, once he crosses those white lines, all bets are off. You're going to hear gay slurs. You're going to hear all kinds of nonsense. You can't tell me that if this guy's a receiver and he catches a pass over the middle and he gets laid out by a safety, that safety might not push his head onto the turf as he's getting up and say, "Stay down, faggot." You can't tell me that that's not going to happen at least once, if not a million times throughout the course of that season. So it's so many different layers that you have to peel back of this if a player were to come out. And this is why I don't think the NFL is anywhere near ready for a gay player. And there's more. So this is probably the most concrete proof that I have that the NFL isn't ready for a gay player, an active gay player. So you look at the offseason and you see a couple of guys who are advocates of gay rights, advocates of gay players, advocates of just the whole gay movement, which is fine, which is great. I'm talking about guys like Chris Cluey, Brendan Ayanbadejo, and then there's another guy that I want to talk about a little bit later, but let's focus in on those two. Chris Cluey, punter, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. I thought he did his job very well in Minnesota. I thought that he was a solid punter. He hasn't done many things to warrant not being on the Minnesota Vikings roster. Yet they felt the need to go out and draft a punter and subsequently cut Chris Cluey. Now, many of you might say that was a coincidence. They were looking for an upgrade at the punter position. And I say, hey, to each its own. If you want to believe that, go right ahead. But I'm looking at it and I'm delving in a little deeper. I'm reading between the lines here. He was cut because this was a guy that was, especially as a punter. If this guy was a linebacker, maybe, just maybe, they would cut him some slack. But then again, Brendan Ayanbadejo is a linebacker and he hasn't been cut any slack. So I don't know if that makes a difference or not. But Chris Cluey is a punter. And he was always a punter that wasn't bashful, would say whatever was on his mind. And sometimes you say, hey, why don't you just have a seat, zip it up, and just punt? And he was a guy that always felt the need to express his opinions on gay rights and was an advocate of gay rights. And I think the Minnesota Vikings got a little tired of this guy talking in the media, especially about gay rights and being an advocate for gay players around the sporting culture. And they said, hey, look, this guy's too big of a liability in that department. How about we just cut him loose and find us another punter? And they did that in the draft. Now, that's just my take on it. But luckily enough for Chris Cluey, he landed somewhere else. Now, will he stick there? He's in Oakland right now. But the Raiders also have a punter that they're very high on, and he's going to be in a battle. But at least he got signed. You look at Brendan Ayanbadejo, and he's not as fortunate. And he's probably been the most he has been the most outspoken player on gay rights. And so he's been on every topic. He's been in front of it. He's been behind it. He's been in the middle of it. This guy, if you didn't know any better, you would assume he was gay. As much as he's going to bat for gay rights and as an advocate of gay rights, you would think that this guy was gay himself. And I don't know if that's the case or not. We can only assume, but doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this guy was a productive member of the Baltimore Ravens, the Super Bowl winning Baltimore Ravens football team. When they were decimated by injuries, this guy had to play and start at times at the linebacker position for the Baltimore Ravens. He's one of the better special teams players in the National Football League. Yet the Ravens decided, hey, we're going to part ways with you. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you felt like we've got younger guys that can come in and help us in the same capacity that you did. Okay, I'm willing to overlook that. But then you look at a move like the San Francisco 49ers made, where they ran and they hustled to go sign a guy like Dan Scooter, a special team standout from the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a guy that you don't want starting, you don't want filling in at the linebacker position. You just want him to play special teams. That's it. Much like a Kasim Osgood. You just want this guy to play special teams. Well, Brendan Ayanbadejo is just as good, if not better, at special teams, in my opinion, than Dan Scooter. And he gives you some extra value as a guy that you can plug into that linebacker position just in case. If it's in case of an emergency, you can break the glass and pull out Brendan Ayanbadejo. Now, you don't want him out there if you don't have to have him, but this guy showed that he can get to the quarterback and he can be a viable option at the linebacker position in a crisis. And so, you're telling me that Dan Scooter is much more of a high priority free agent as a special teams player than Brendan Ayanbadejo, who brings more value to your football team? Is that what you're telling me? Fine. If that's what you're saying, I have no problems with that. But the other 31 teams around the league feel the same exact way as well. No one signed Brendan Ayanbadejo yet. I have a hard time believing that this guy can't help someone's football team, especially from a special team standpoint. If the 49ers were that hard-pressed that they had to go out and get Dan Scooter early on in free agency, mind you, you're telling me Brendan Ayanbadejo wasn't a better option than Dan Scooter? I'm not buying that whatsoever. And so he's already come out and said, and this is how you know, he sees the writing on the wall. He realizes what's being done to him. He's being blackballed in the National Football League. And he already realizes it. He said, hey, I've come to grips and I'm at peace with the fact that my NFL career may be over. So he already knows that the writing's on the wall, that NFL teams have already looked at him and said, this guy is too much of a liability. This guy may be gay, and he came out and he hasn't helped his cause at all. And I think he's okay with that. Like he said, he's at peace with the fact that he might never play in the National Football League again. He said, look, there's at least 4 or 5 players in the National Football League that are gay that are going to come out at some point. Who's to say he's not one of them? So teams are wary of that, and don't think for one second GMs aren't paying attention, because GMs, they hear and see everything. And so they know this guy's bad news. We're going to keep our hands off of Brendan Ayanbadejo. He's a guy that we don't want to go near. Now, here's my biggest evidence as to why I think the NFL is not ready for a gay player. And this is the most proof I have, and I'm going to just lay it out there for you. Okay? If you don't know by now, the pictures are incriminating. You can't deny them. It is what it is. Kerry Rhodes, ex-Jet, ex-Arizona Cardinals safety, is 98.7% gay. Okay? Now, I'm not making any world announcement. I'm not breaking any news. If you just type his name in on any search engine, Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever floats your boat. If you just type his name in, you don't have to type in gay. Just type in Kerry Rhodes. You'll see what I'm talking about. And the pictures, they tell a story. They say 1,000 words. There's not much I can say about that. And there's not much Kerry Rhodes can say in his defense. Okay? So, Kerry Rhodes is a free agent. Arizona Cardinals decided to part ways with him. Fine. He's a 30-year-old safety. And this is how I feel about the safety position in the National Football League, okay? This is how I feel about safeties. Safeties in the National Football League are much like left-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball. Does your arm work? Can you get it over the plate? If you can put a checkbox in both of those columns, you can still pitch in Major League Baseball, okay? If your arm still works and you're left-handed and you can get it over the plate, there's a place for you on a Major League Baseball roster. How many guys have we seen 50 years old, seems like they're 100 years old, have been pitching forever because they're left-handed, they're a commodity in Major League Baseball? Look no further than Jamie Moyer, a guy that's been soft tossing the ball over the plate for at least a decade, yet he always manages to find his way onto a Major League Baseball roster because he's left-handed and he can get it over the plate. And that's a commodity that is highly sought after in Major League Baseball. I feel like the safety position, same way. When you're old, you're not called old as a safety. You're a seasoned veteran. At most positions, when you're old, and no one else wants you. You're discarded and you're done. Well, at the safety position, you can play until you're 37 years old if you're a productive football player. Look at Rodney Harrison. This guy played forever. And what teams do and what the league does with safeties is they recycle cornerbacks and turn them into safeties. If they find a cornerback who wasn't afraid to tackle at the cornerback position, he has great ball skills, and they feel like he can still be an asset on the football field, they take that cornerback and move him to safety. And so they play another 4 or 5 or 6 years in the National Football League. We saw that happen with Rod Woodson. All-pro corner turns into a Hall of Fame safety. We saw it happen with a plethora of guys. We saw it with Deion Sanders. We've seen it happen with Charles Woodson. He's evolved into a safety. It's what the league does. They take cornerbacks, they move them and convert them into safeties. So guys play well into their 30s as safeties. If you're smart, you understand the game of football, you can tackle, you take good angles, guess what? Welcome to the safety club. You're now a safety in the National Football League. So there's no such thing as being too old to play the safety position in terms of when you're just 30 years old. When you're 30 and you're a running back, you're old. When you're 30 and you're a cornerback, you're old. But when you're 30 and you're a safety, you're right there. You're right in the prime of your career. You're a smart guy. You understand how to play the safety position. So when I see a guy like Gerald Sensabaugh retire at the age of 30 with teams like the Titans and the Cardinals ready to sign this guy up, who I thought was a marginal safety throughout his entire career. So you got teams beating his door down for his services at the age of 30. Last played with the Cowboys, didn't do much of anything with the Cowboys, and he decided, hey, I'm going to hang it up as a free agent. Yet, a guy like Kerry Rhodes, who I presume, who you probably presume, and I'm guessing every GM in the National Football League presume is gay, can't get a job. Now, normally, this is how I feel about veterans around the National Football League who don't have work, who I feel still have something left in the tank. You have to wait out the process. Your phone will ring. Players get injured. Teams have voids. Your phone will ring eventually. We've seen it happen numerous times in this offseason alone. Melvin Ingram goes down for the Chargers. Dwight Freeney's phone rings. Okay? You look around the league, OCU Minor, no more John Abraham in Atlanta, OCU Minora's phone rings. Okay? The Colts looking to bolster their running back position. Guess what? Ahmad Bradshaw's phone rings. Charles Woodson ready to go home to Oakland. Guess what? The Raiders looking to stimulate some competition at the safety position. Charles Woodson's phone rings. So your phone will ring as a veteran player if you're still in shape. If teams feel like you can still contribute in this league, your phone will ring. You just have to wait out the process. It may not ring when you want it to. It may not ring at the beginning of free agency. It may not ring at the end of free agency. It may not ring at the beginning of training camp, but it will ring at some point. But in Kerry Rhodes' situation, and in his case, I don't think his phone is going to ring. And he's 30 years old. He had 4 interceptions last year for the Arizona Cardinals. I thought he played really well. He's got a lot more football left in the tank. And if Gerald Sensabaugh was commanding offers from teams when he decided to retire, you're telling me Kerry Rhodes, who is the same age, much more productive as a pro in his career, can't get work? No one's beating this guy's door down to give him a job? Why do you think that is? I'll let you draw your own inference. And so, to me, that's the biggest piece right there. That's the biggest mystery and question mark I have. Why isn't Kerry Rhodes already working? Because teams were willing to give Gerald Sensabaugh a job. They were willing to sign him up on the dotted line. Kerry Rhodes is 2 times better than Gerald Sensabaugh ever was. The same age. I think he's got a lot left in the tank. What's the problem? GMs around the league know that this guy is gay and they don't want to chance it. It's too risky. Too risky. And the pictures online, they say it all. They tell the story. They tell everything you need to know about that situation. And they know that is a situation you don't touch. And so even though Roger Goodell and everyone will say, hey, the NFL is ready for a gay player, I'm here to tell you that the circumstances surrounding the National Football League, in it and around it, this league is nowhere near ready for a gay player. And so I tell you this, in my estimation, and this is the way I feel, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think the NFL is anywhere near ready for a gay player. And so I don't think anytime soon you'll be hearing that there's a player gay in the NFL.
Gay in the NFL. The league.
In the lab.
Exclusive.